Hello, hello, hello. So today is the very first series of the, I guess, Pokemon-like clone. Um, Today is mainly going to be the setup. So here I have an empty open project. For anyone wondering, this is a 2D Unity project. So I'm going to start by laying out some folders. We're going to, of course, have our scripts folder. I will change our scenes folder slightly by adding an underscore with it. That is so it appears as a first folder in the inspection. Then we're going to have our resources folder, and let's just create our prefabs, resources prefabs. What else would we like? I think in our let's just put a scriptable objects, and actually put that folder at the front as well, like so. And there we are. So now that we have this, so for this actual series, I've prepared a lot of assets. I have some asset packs that I'll be adding soon inside the project. But before we go that, let's create some scenes. So we'll be using two sets of scenes for now. So first scene is going to be our battle scene, and we will also have our where are we scene? The world scene. Now let's remove the sample scene. And for today we are going to focus on our battle scene. So our battle scene is going to be mainly a piece of UI. Let's see if I have my little references. Slides. Where are we? So if we look at the battle sequence of Pokemon, it looks something like this. We have various moves to choose from. So this is what the left picture is what they look like in the earlier version, and right is a newer one. So let's first start off by creating all of these panels. So I'm just going to drag my reference to the right of the screen, and I'll start by creating a new UI canvas. There we go. Now, first thing I'm going to change is from a constant pixel size to scale with screen, because we want our screen to scale with our screen resolution so we can play with full screen mode. And let's call this the battle canvas. Now, our battle canvas will have, well, we'll have the following: a panel on the left side, which is where we're going to contain our four move icons. So this is going to be our panel, and we are going to call it panel, and this is going to be, I guess, actions. And inside of this panel, we'll make 4 buttons. So let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, and add a component to this, a vertical layout group, so it nicely layers it. And let's put it in the center, like so. Now let's name all of our buttons. So our first one is going to be fight. We could change it to an action, but let's just do it just like we have in our references. Then we will have our, I guess, character select, character change, I guess fight, select move will make more sense for this. What else do we have? Then we have the inventory. And finally, we have escape. So let's add a piece of text to each of these: escape, inventory, and then what was the second one? Character. And the final one is going to be attack for now. Now, let's set them up. so they're slightly bigger. Give them a maximum of about 20, minimum 8. Make it bold. There we go. And that's good enough for now. Now that we have this panel, let's squeeze it in and see how it looks like. There we go, like this. That's fine. Now let's duplicate this panel one more time. And we're going to change this to panel moves. And this will be our moves that the player can perform. Now, for this one, we are going to remove every move apart from the default move. And let's just disable this panel for now. Now, one thing that we want to do is we want the moves to kind of don't want them to. Let's do one. Let's try 1, 2, 3. Like so. Okay, I think it's going to be better this way, but it has to fit with the other ones. Disappear. So let's play around with this. Actually, let's leave the panel for now. We'll play with that later. So we have one move. The reason why we only need one move is because we're going to automatically populate the moves from the moves available by our character later. So that's a second panel done. Now we need a player and enemy health panels. So let's create those. So we're going to create another panel and we will place our player panel and enemy panel, and we'll just duplicate it once we have one of them. So let's set it for here now, and let's call this a panel. I guess this is the character information. Character information, like so. And now what do we have here? Inside the information, what we have on our reference, we need a name, I guess the gender icon, level, and then how much health, and then health in numbers aside from a bar. So let's do this. First, create a text component, which is going to be the name. So text character name. Then we need another text, which is going to be the character level. And we need another text for character health. Finally, we need an image, which is going to be called the health bar background, and the health bar foreground, which is going to be inside our background, which is going to be foreground, like so. Now, with this done, let's position our panels slightly. So I believe, let me open up the reference a little bit again. So we need our foreground in about middle. Now this of course will be subject to change. Oh, I see. So the enemy one is slightly different than the player one. It doesn't show exactly how much health they have. We only see the health on our player. So let's do 300 by 304 and position it to the left. Make it slightly bigger. Now I'm going to leave the anchoring for now because I am unsure of how I want these to be. Do we have, did I select the right one? No. You meant to go here. So let's just put level 100, like so. Get specific to the right, and then find the name, which is going to be the name. Okay, so that's our bar for now. And for our enemy, we're just going to disable this component, which is fine. So that's another panel done. And with this, we have all of our core panels done. Of course, for each enemy, we'll need 2 sets of positions. One's going to be for, wait, actually, this panel has to move here. And then we'll, of course, have our enemy one in this corner, like so. Right. Now, since this is a Pokemon like, we would need, so our starting position for the enemies would be in this corner here, and for the players it would be here. Of course, I don't believe it will be necessary for this part to add the assets, as we'll be stuck in a rabbit hole of code. So first, let's start doing some code. I'll actually open Paint. What I'll do, so we'll use switch cases to control how we move. So we'll have 3 sets of controllers that are connected to each other. So first we will have our, I guess we'll call it the battle controller. We'll have a player input controller, and finally we will have our character controller. Now, the character controller will be connected to our battle controller, and the battle controller will have a reference to our character controller. What character controller switch will do is it will control the state of our character. So that's the animation for moving or just being in a waiting zone. The input will control the player clicks and will check when player can and cannot click, which will feed back any input into the battle controller. And of course, the battle controller will signal when it's necessary for the player input controller to work. And of course, battle controller will have a switch case which will determine whose turn it is whenever something's loading in between, etc. So let's create a folder for this and call it the battle management. And inside we'll create 3 sets of classes. So first one's going to be our character controller. It has the same name. Yeah, that's not going to work. So character battle controller, like so. Then let's create another script called battle controller. And finally, player input controller. Player input controller, like so. Whoa. Now let's open all of these 3 classes and start doing some coding. My mouse is a bit funny. So delete these, and delete these. Save the classes. And now let's do a little bit of code. So, like I said, we're going to run everything off a switch case. So each of these needs a update function. Like so. And each of these will need their own state to manage everything. So for our character state, let's create a private enum, and let's call it the character. No, this is the battle one. Okay. So this is going to be the well, just the battle state, like so. Oh, like so. Now let's copy this through to every single one of them and just slightly change what they're called. So for our character controller, we just call it character state, and that's the current state of the character. And then input state, and that's going to be our current state, like so. And now let's create the switch cases. So for our battle controller, for now, let's put processing, a processing state, select action, perform action, and then we have our lose and win conditions. Whereas for our character states, we will have initialize, wait, select action, perform action, and finally the dead state is when the character is no longer in action. For our player selection, we will have select action, wait, and finish action, like so. Now each of these have to be put in a switch case, so you'll put switch current state, and the way we do switch cases is by doing case and then the name of the enum, and we just put select, and we just put all of these cases in, and at the end we break it, like so, and then content in here, like so. So we need to do this for every single one of them. So we will have our wait, and we will have our finish. Like so. Let me copy one of them so it's easier. Now for this one we need 5, 1, 2, 3. Wait, select, oh, perform, actually, and then that's enough, I guess. And do the same for the last one to declare our states. Of course, we need to change this into processing. Oh, that's right, we didn't write the switch. Like so. And for this one, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as well. So 2, 3, 4, 5. Change that to select action, perform action, lose, and finally win, like so. Now, every single character that we will have in the game will be added to our list of characters, which is going to be in the battle controller. So the battle controller will have a private list of character battle controller, and that's going to be called characters in, well, characters to manage, because those will be all the characters that we need to add and control within the game. Now in start, we will add the characters based on the pooled characters, like so. And that's going to be used by instantiating the characters in. And then once the characters are in, we can start managing how they function. So let's just set up, let's start setting up our cases up a little bit by little bit. So what our processing will do is if our fighters, characters, how did we call it? There you go. Count is smaller than or equal to 0. So that means if we don't have any characters, then all we have to do is set our current state to be equal to the processing state. No. That's wrong one. Right here. Whereas in the processing, we need to process all of our active fighters. So let's create a function for that. Private void process active characters. Now, what will processing of active characters do? This will set up every available character in by changing their speed and setting up who's in the actual battle. So if we go into start, once we add and instantiate all the characters, we will then, wait, when I start below, let's move things around a little bit. There we go, like here. So we add them, then we set up the state machine. So our setup of the state machine will set our current state, and that's going to be equal to processing. And processing will, of course, do this. And then once we are done with the process, we'll do current state is equal to dot perform action, because then we can start, select action. Because we already have characters, we can do this. Of course, if we don't have enough characters, we'll go back to processing. But if not, we'll do. So if we actually have characters, so else if our, what is it called, characters to manage, and then we probably need some kind of a tag for our characters. So let's call it character. And then this will allow us motion for our characters. I guess we can do, since we're going to have two different players, we'll have the player 1 and player 2, which is us and the enemy. Let's call this player 1 and player 2. Are there any tags like this, or do we have to create them? No. So let's add two tags, and one's going to be player 1, and the other one's going to be player 2. Now, player 1's going to refer to us, the player 2 is going to refer to the enemy. And once we have this, we can then get our battle state to wait. Wait, what? Do we not? Oh, I think we're actually missing one state. Like so. So let's quickly add this in. Now, the reason why we're going to have that one is because when our player is going to perform actions, we will not have any action over. Well, this will just not do anything. It will go into idling process. So now we need a reference to our player input controller, and then player input controller, like so. And when this goes into waiting, this is when our player input controller becomes available and is no longer in wait sequence. So let's go into our player input controller. Let's add a start function. And let's also get a reference to our battle controller. Actually, did we get the reference in the previous one, or did we not? No, we didn't. So set up references. and our player input controller is going to be equal to this.gameObject.component player input controller, like so. I'm going to move this around a little bit, like so. And at the very bottom, I'll just make a region, and I'm going to call enum changing and region. And I'll do the same for this one. This will be used for calling simple functions that will just allow us to change an enum to a specified enum without having to make the enum field public. Okay, so what were we doing? We go into processing. Now, processing will have to add every single character that already exists within the game. So let's duplicate this function here, and then a total characters in battle. So this will store all the actual characters that all the actual characters that we do have currently in battle. The reason why we're keeping it as a list, because we can be ambiguous with the amount of characters that we have currently active. Of course, in Pokemon, you have a 1v1, but there's also 2v2s. And in the newer Pokemons, you have raid battles, which include a lot of characters within the game. So what do we have here? Add characters based on a pool. So what's going to happen in our processing is we'll go to manage. So what this does is we first clear out the list. We then go through our for characters.count. So we will loop for every character in here, and we will add them to our characters to manage. So we will do characters to manage dot add total characters in battle at I. So why we're doing this is because let's just say we are in a 2v2 format. So we have 2v2. And then if our character is currently dead, then we don't want to add 4. We want to add only 3 because that one will no longer be needed to be cycled through. So in here, what we need to do is create a boolean called isDead. And of course, we'll set it to false. And as part of our initialization, isDead will always be false on start. Now, this is something that we'll need to get. So we'll get this value, but never set it. So this checks, determines whenever a character is dead or not. So each time we'll add a character, what we'll actually do is we'll do if character managed if our total characters is dead is equal to false. Because if it's set to true, we don't want to add them to characters that we need to manage, because at that point there is no characters for us to manage. So once that's all done, we can then change to our next action, which is the battle action. And of course that then waits and enables all of the inputs for our player. Of course, if it's player 2, we will perform the AI, but we are not going to focus on the AI functions just yet. So let's move on to our player controller and create a public void, and we're going to call it set select action. And what this will do is we'll set our current state to input.select action. Now, when we initialize our current state will be in wait. And something that we also have to do here is set up a, what do we have? We will need to set up a script execution order because we want our scripts to execute correctly. Actually, let's leave this till we get an error, and then I know this will happen at some point. So our default state, I'm just going to do this. So what do we have? For a character is going to be initialize. For our input controller is going to be waiting, and for our battle it's going to be processing. Just a little bit of a short fire. Okay, so this will set our input to selecting of an action. And this is where we enable a lot of select. So when our action gets selected, we will enable some panels for our player to control. So this is where we will reference some UI. So what we really want is both of these panels to, the actions panel and the moves panel to be available. So let's get two references. Private transform, and first one's going to be the actions panel, and then we will have the moves panel. Let's add a header. Actually, before the header, move this higher in here, and we'll call this move. So this is going to be our the panel UI panels. So you'll have action and moves panel. Now, by default, both of these panels will be set to false. So let's do actions panel transform.set GameObject.set to false. Then moves panel as well. Now, when we go into this, we'll set it to true. Actually, this what do we have here? No. Yeah, I really will need to change the execution order. It'll definitely have issues. Where was it? Project settings. Is it in project settings? So in project settings script, we can add classes. So I'll quickly explain in a second how it works. So let's first add our player input and then the battle controller. We can ignore the last one first. So for this specific project, as we see, we have multiple starts and multiple updates, right? They don't all start at the same time. They go in order. And this order is assigned with the script execution order. So if we look at this here, the start of our input controller will start at 100, and then a battle controller will start at 200. That means that our player input controller is going to start first, and the battle controller is going to start second. That's the important part. Let's create a new game object in here while we're at it, and we're going to call it the battle controller. Now our battle controller needs two classes attached to it. It needs the player input and it needs the battle controller, like so. For the battle controller, I believe, no, for the player input, we need to set these to be serializable fields. Serializable field, like so. And then let's drag in the panels. So let's go into our battle controller, get our action panel, and get our moves panel, and save it like so. So what's going to happen now is this panel will be enabled, and then this panel will let us select either of these icons. So let's code in some of our buttons now. Okay. Yep, that's fine. Actually, no. Let's just do everything so we don't get any errors at any point. So let's create a new script, and this is going to be the action button. And inside of here, let's create a new button for, new folder for buttons, because we'll have a few of them. Now, our action button is something that we will attach to the default buttons. And for now, let's do only the attack. Hello? Oh, because I'm in a game scene. So let's attach this script here. Press add empty, and then self-attach this one. And what we'll basically have here for now is public void add, well, public void action. Let's just call it that. We will use inheritance to change how this button works later. And what this will do by default is it will open up our next panel. So all of them, we need to have access to our player input. So player input controller, start controller is equal to game object.find, and we're looking for battle controller. Okay, component player. And actually, rather than having it in start, I'm actually going to put it by the button. So if controller is equal to no. Now, the reason is because sometimes maybe we'll never click on a specific button, so we can save the searches instead of running all of our searches at the start. We'll just go through the if statement instead. Okay, so we'll do this, and then in our controller script, we will need a function which will correspond to this. So public void enable moves. Now, of course, our moves will have to load in the moves, but we don't have any moves yet, so we'll leave this at this. Enable player moves, and enable player moves will set our actions panel to false, and it will enable the other panel to true. So let's just copy this for now. Moves panel. There we go. 1, 2. Now let's create a temporary button for now, and it's going to be a. What do we have here? Moves button, and let's just drag it in. So what the moves button will do for now is just allow us to change. So as long as we get the movement down today, that'll be, I think, good enough for today. And let's create a quick public void test next action, test and action, like so. Let's just quickly make sure all of our buttons work as they should. So this has the moves, and this has the action. Action, and moves. We'll have our little test script. And what we'll put in here is, of course, just like in the other one, we do need to copy this across for now. Private player input controller. And here we need to call a function that we've created not too long ago, which was, where are we? The enable player moves. Like so. And this will do our little N action. Where are we? So what the end action will do is it will select our moves panel to false, and it will remove the character from the list that we have here. So total characters. And let's actually make this serializable. And this will have to be accessible by multiple different classes. So let's just leave it this as this. And then do here file controller dot characters to dot remove at, and we're going to remove at 0. So we'll disable the panel, remove the character at 0. For now, let's put this then in the waiting state, because this is where our turn ends, and we might actually not need so many states now that I think about it. So I was waiting. Yeah, let's just go back to our select action again for now. So controller, so we don't need you for now. And in our enum changing, we'll add public void select action. So current state is equal to select action, like so. And let's call select action from here. Okay, now with this, let's add some. Let's create some empty game objects, and let's just call it character1. And duplicate a few times and attach our character battle controller inside. Now, where are we? Let's add 1 player 2 and 3 player 1s into this. Where is our battle controller? So here we have our characters to manage, and of course we need to add every character that we have. For now we don't have instantiation, so we'll do, this is going to be temporary. So actually no, since it's temporary, we're just going to make this field serializable, and I'll just drag and drop the total characters into the battle. Later on, we will instantiate them ourselves based on the information that we provide. So let's put every character in and see what's going to happen. Let's give this a play. I believe with this, the project itself should work. Okay. I need to be able to see the states to know what's happening. Let's make everything public for now. And then later private it. Okay, so let's click on the battle controller. So this successfully has added a character, but we went into the waiting. But what is our first character tag? It is player 1. So where did we go wrong? So if we went, that means we found the character of our tag. Oh, we didn't actually process the action through. So what we actually had to do before we changed was go into, where are we? Player input controller dot, and then we needed to call where did I go? Oh, why did it? Okay, whatever. Hello? No, that's fine. Enable player. No, not enable player moves. Enable actions. So public void enable actions, like so. And of course, enable actions has to, no, set select action. So we do have it. Where are we? We just need to call it. So set select action, like so. So there you go. Now the game started and moved into our select action state. And now if we press attack, it loads in our next panel. And now if we click play, we get an error. Why do we get an error? So we've never actually referenced our little battle script. Okay, so let's just do that. Battle controller is equal to game object component battle controller, like so. And now we should be perfectly connected. So let's perform the attack 1 and 2. And that removes our character from the list of characters. We click 1, 2, 1, 2. And then for the last one, we don't get to do anything because the last one is a AI. So if we do, so for now, let's create a empty action. So temporary, and we'll just do else. And what we do here is we'll just call our processing over again. So I'm just going to call processing here to completely skip out on our enemy's move for now. And with this, we actually have the entire system of moving our character. Now, let's actually start, since we have 10 minutes left, let's work on our character class and everything that the character will contain. So I have a little cheat sheet for this that I've recreated. So the character stats will be created with two different systems. So let's close every unnecessary class. So we'll need our character controller, but we'll also need a new class called character. And that's going to be a scriptable object. So let's change this to a scriptable object. And just do create asset menu, leave this blank for now. We can actually just fill in, what do we do? File name, there we go, file name. So this is gonna be character, new character. So it's gonna be, let's just do something like this. Characters, new character, and then order Pokemon. Let's leave it at that, and let's quickly check if it works. In our scriptable, let's add a new folder for characters. There you go. So this works fine. Now let's code in everything that we will need. So we'll need a private string, character name. So every character will have a name, and that will never be changed. Although we can add nicknames later, but that would be added somewhere else. Now that I think about it, I actually need another class of this because that's going to be the instance that we will store. So scriptable is going to be the permanent values of a character, and then we'll have the non-permanent. So let's create a new class here called owned character. And let's move these two scripts. So no, out of the battle manager. So let's create a new folder, and this is called the characters. And now let's go here, and our character and own character will be moved into the characters folder. Now, the owned character is going to be what we will save, and that's going to be just a basic class, whereas scriptable will be the permanent thing about a character. So, to put simply, the stuff like base stats, anything that will never be changed will be saved here, but everything that the character has going will not be. So private string scriptable ID. So that's going to be the ID by which we will get our object. We could change that to an integer. Yeah, let's just change that to an integer. And then we'll have private int base HP, private int base attack. So this is going to be base stat of health, base stat of attack. Now, if anyone's unfamiliar, Pokemons have 6 sets of stats. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They have the defense, special attack, special defense, and speed. Of speed, of special defense, of special attack. Now, the reason why we'll just use this system is because I believe it's a very well-balanced system that can be used for anything. For example, an attack could be just any physical attack, whereas a special attack could mean anything from, if I don't know, like some chakra attacks from Naruto or key strikes from Dragon Ball. It's really up to the user's perspective. And then we'll have our types. So we'll have private enum. Actually, can I make them serializable? Probably not. Public enum. No, because I want to have double typing, maybe. So let's leave this as blank for now. So yeah, so this is it. Whereas in here, we will... So the own character doesn't need to store the base values or even the converted values, because the converted values will be calculated based on other values. But what the character does have to store here is, so wait, let's just make some headings actually. Header base stats. So let's call them the IV stats. So Pokemons have a lot more statistics, which is the IV, which is the, and the EV. EV, I think it's called for, what is it, effort values? IV, I don't remember what IV stands for. I'm not that big on Pokemon. So let's create them. So I'm just going to copy these guys into here. Where are we? Twice. And we're going to change them. So this is not going to be base anymore. This is going to be IV, 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 and these will be EVs. So of course, this will be everything that will be saved eventually on our player character. And the converted values will be in here. So again, we're going to copy this entire row. So this will have the actual stats. So this will have the health. This will have the attack. This will have the defense. This will have the special attack. This will have the special defense, and this will have the speed value. The speed statistic to determine who moves first. And for now, let's make our speed serializable field. Base of stat of, so this is the special defense for calculating damage mitigation from special attacks. Actually, I'm going to do the rest of the commenting after the video because we don't have much time left. So a cool thing that we can add now real quickly is if we go back into our battle controller, and let's just set up some different speed values on our characters. Like so. In here, where we add our characters to list, once we finished adding, there is one more line of code that we can do, but we have to use using Unity engine.ling. No, not Unity, using system.linkQ. And linkQ allows us to use this very handy thing, which works like this. So we'll use our characters to manage a list, and we're going to make it equal to this list. But what we're going to do now is we're going to order it by, is it descending or ascending? Which way is which? Let's try descending first and see what that does. And then we're going to write this little magical formula out. And then that's going to be character battle controller. Of course, for this to work, our speed needs to be accessible. Hello? Which is in here. We don't need to set it, but we do need to get the value. So let's just type in speed. And then, whoopsie daisy. And then all we have to do here is close this off and then to list, like so. And what this will do is it will order all of our characters based on the speed in the descending way. So let's have a look at these first. So our first character, which normally gets added as the first one, has a speed of 5, this one has a 9, and this one has 12. So if everything goes well, our third character is going to be the first one to go, this one's going to be the second, and this one's going to be the third. So let's click on our battle controller and have a look at the order. And as we see, the order is different than here. That's because it's actually correct. So our fastest moving character is the first character to be sorted into our little system. Let's finish adding all of the remaining values into the project for our base statistics. And once that's done, I'll add a little bit of commenting for the next session of the stream. And then on Friday, we can continue with either this or the actual world movement for our character. Okay, so what else do we have? So our own characters will have abilities. So we will need to have our passive, I guess. This is what our ability is going to be because we don't want to, yeah. So we'll have a passive class that needs to be added. Aside from that, we need our level related stuff, which is going to be things like private integer level, private integer max level. No, so it's going to be our level. We will have our private integer current experience, private integer required experience, like so. In our character itself, we will again have the level header. No point. Our max level is going to be same for every single character, so there's no point adding a max level into the game. And I believe this is it for now. We can start working with it, but we also need a private. We will need a copy of this. Okay, with this, I think this should be good enough to go on from now on. So this is our first episode, which set up our project. In the next one, we'll add some assets and either continue with this system or move on to the overworld movement. I'll see what I feel like doing when the time gets to it. Thanks for watching for today, and I'll see you on Friday. Tomorrow we're doing the puzzle game, and on Monday we're starting with the Mario series. So until then.